Welcome to Optimized for Humans. I'm Usha, your podcast host. I'm an executive coach and consultant, and I'm really passionate about this topic of how AI gets integrated into the workplace in a way that's optimized for humans. And I'm really excited to be speaking with Shane today, Shane Asmus. I hope I pronounced your last name correctly. Who's the global head of workforce strategy and people analytics at FIS. Shane, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to speak with you because you have such a rich background in analytics, and I feel like you've held multiple internal facing roles from finance to HR, and you have such a rich view of how to actually bring people together in these internal roles and make things far more effective than they normally tend to be, and kind of really move past the bureaucracy that usually slows us down. So, welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here and appreciate you asking me to come in and speak today on this. It's a topic that I'm really passionate about. It's something that has been part of my career path for the last 15 years. After I left the US Navy, I came into actual business in Wells Fargo, and I was a frontline business manager. Really saw how we use data on the front lines. And as I grew my career and my education and started to get into the analytics field at Wells Fargo in the HR realm, really focused on how do we make managers more effective, giving them time back to do what we've hired them to do. And I think that's been the anchor of everything I do on every day is how do we make managers more successful without giving them burden?
I love that. I know that there'll be a lot of people in the business, especially who will want more internal facing roles to be thinking exactly like that. I think that's a really sharp perspective that you're bringing to the table there.
Exactly. And I think one of my key things I tell everybody is I'm not a huge fan of self-serve. I think self-service over the last decade has been how do we cut costs in the center and push our process burden back onto the manager. And I want to eliminate that, right? Like have your centers do the right work at the right time with your expertise. And a great example of that is requisitions. A manager might open one requisition per year, maybe every 2 years if they don't have attrition on their team or growth. So, how can I expect them to know the ins and outs and how to do everything with lackluster tools, complicated forms, not understanding where to go? No, we want to make that easy. And that's one of the things like I love AI for is how does a manager just say, I need to fill this seat? Great. Let me help you.
I love that. So I'd love to start with this question for you, which is where should leaders actually begin when they're told to go do AI? Because I think a lot of times the mandate sort of comes from the top in this ambiguous way.
Yeah, the buzzword of all buzzwords. Every board's talking about it to every C-suite. It comes down. I'm a firm believer in start with a business problem, not the tech. The tech will enable you. The tech will come. We'll figure that out. But what is the business problem? What are you trying to achieve? What's the outcome? How does that look? Then AI is a tool, not the strategy, but a tool to solve the business problem. And for everything I post out on LinkedIn and talk about with my peers and really engage in is foundations, right? Build the right foundations, begin small, get one high impact thing, and then scale from there, right? I'm a firm believer in I'll solve 105-minute saves in a year happily versus one 500-minute save and take 2 years to do because the
Yeah.
small incremental wins deliver value fast,
Yeah.
build trust within in your groups, and it kind of stems from one of the McKinsey articles I read a little while ago around AI organizations that really link AI to like clear KPIs. They're 3x more likely to achieve ROI, right? So that monitoring,
Right.
that tracking, that value realization, small, fast, incremental wins add up quite quickly. And it also serves as an education center too. People start to see, oh, well, it solved this little problem here. I didn't even think about it, but can you do this? and they're excited to engage you because I'm not about taking away from, I'm about adding more value to. And that's how people want to join that journey.
I love that. I love the kind of starting with the problem and starting in that kind of incremental, 1% better each time kind of approach. What do you think are some foundations that should exist before organizations can start to scale AI?
Simple. Data quality, data governance, process, those three keys are it. I always relate this to building a house. I don't go in and I build a roof on. I don't go in, I don't decorate walls that don't exist. Right? That's not how you start. Starting with a solid foundation that goes up from there saves you so much time because along that journey of building the foundation, you're educating, you're also automating things that you didn't know you needed to automate, right? So you're getting incremental gains as you're going through that. But AI, I've spoken about this on a couple different occasions, but AI is going to give you an answer. Now, whether that answer is right or not, it's going to sound very confident in the answer that it delivers to you. Well, if you
Yeah.
want it to give you the right answers, you need data foundations, you need data governance, and you need process. That's when AI at scale really delivers value. I
So you're
think it would,
saying we need to make sure
oh,
it's looking at the right set of data?
exactly. A big thing right now you hear um, synthetic data has been a big thing from Gartner over the last couple of years. That's bootstrapping technique for statistical modeling. But again, at the root cause of or root foundations of all AI, it's an algorithm, right? It's a mathematical algorithm, a prediction algorithm, which it
Yeah.
needs great data, right? And AI, agentic AI is vector databases. What's the likelihood of the next key sequence of words based on what I have here? It's math behind the scenes, and having the right data foundations leads to the right outcomes of your agents. And it was Gartner that had a great study a couple years ago that data quality costs at firms on an annual basis around $13 million just from bad data. And if you use a simple example of headcount, if I'm not counting the right amount of heads in my plan, that's dollars translated directly through, right? So if a leader thinks they're allowed to have 15 headcount, the systems tell you 15 headcount, and you're spending, $100,000 per each one of those, adds up quite a bit when you were only supposed to have 12, right? So that data quality is monumental to the success of your programs.
Yeah, and the process piece I think is a really big one as well. And one of the things I want to kind of pick at with that is I think AI is becoming a little bit of a favorite silver bullet when it comes to bad process. People are like, this process doesn't work. Let's throw AI into the mix to solve that problem. And a colleague of mine, Bob Gower, has mentioned this in a recent conversation I had, which is if you throw AI into an inefficient process, it just kind of increases the inefficiency. You have to actually go down to and fix the core process first, and part of that can be asking, are there steps in the process that are better handled by AI, rather than it's just a bit like let's add a little bit of chaos to this and see what happens is I think the actual kind of practical how that pans out when we just throw it at any and all problems without actually figuring out what they are and what we're trying to achieve.
Yep. And long-term success depends on that, on the process, right? And I go back to my Lean Six Sigma days and training and thinking about lean manufacturing. How do you process each step and why are you doing the steps? But I think about something I learned in the military is kind of the seven questions. Getting to the root cause of a problem. What seven what's? Why? To get to the root problem, solve that root problem, which then usually alleviates a ton of downstream problems more than just what you're trying to solve for
Yeah.
it and then you build good process on top of it. I've always said, technology is an enabler for that hockey stick growth. right? Like you really want that exponential growth. That's great. But how do you get there? You have to have good process, good data, and good governance first. And you'll see your gains. You'll see a linear growth pattern. And then you enter technology, i.e., AI. And that's where you get your hockey stick growth coming out of that. But without that foundations, you are setting yourself up for some very tough times.
Yeah, and one of the things I really love about this conversation so far is we're actually like coming down to the basics and simple things that, leaders can do regardless of their role, right? It's
Mhm.
starting with the problem. What am I trying to solve? Why am I trying to solve it? Getting really clear on what's actually broken, figuring out what is the right intervention and what's the smallest intervention we can make to make this better. And, do we have the right information in place to be making the right decisions? Do we have the right guardrails in place so that, we're moving in the right direction? So it's actually really simple. I think sometimes with this, it gets like over complicated and, people think like, oh, we need all of this, especially I think with something like data or privacy. I think people assume it's some big mysterious thing that we need to go to some of their team for or bring somebody in for. But it's actually, I think, a lot simpler than that. Is kind of what I'm hearing from some of your insights around this of just like start with the problem, make sure you've got the right you have like the right information that you're working with, have the right guardrails in place, and like unpack your process to figure out where the kinks are rather than just trying to throw more chaos at things.
Absolutely. Aim small, miss small. I think we're talking to we're taught in the military,
Yeah,
work the problem. But coming through, I've
yeah.
been in part of too many projects where the measurement of success was thought of last. Got this great idea, gonna throw it on here. We're gonna do AI here. We're gonna do that, and you sit back and you go, what problem are you solving? What value are you gaining from this? And
Yeah,
everybody kind of sits around and is like, I don't know. Then why are we putting? So a lot of times people in the business in our businesses forget that time is money, right?
yeah,
Especially in the back offices,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah,
Every minute of my team's time on a call or building an AI or doing something is opportunity cost loss, but also real hard dollars. I'm spending a salary every minute that person is working. So I want to make sure they're maximized on what they're doing and delivering. So that measurement of success is what something I ask for right up front. Like, what does success look like for you? And it really helps turn some projects around. And some projects get scrapped because you're right. There isn't really a value ROI on this. Great, then let's not do that. But one of the things that my HR experience has taught me, and being in the IO psych space for so many years, is uh, the human. How do I want to say this? Is how humans adapt to change, and for change's sake. And I think the one constant we can say over the last decade in the corporate America is change. Everything's been changing, and technology's changing. Work from home, the pandemic threw so much into the mix and change. The human psyche is only capable of absorbing so much change before they just kind of shut down. And if you're introducing change for change's sake without saying what's the value in it for the human, they're not going to want to come along that journey with you. So, that's been a large part of what I've tried to do is how do we show the average manager, average employee that, hey, I'm introducing a technology product here, a data product, an AI product, and this is what it means to you and what value you're going to get out of it, right? Like we've hired you in the organization to do X, Y, Z job. I'm going to enable you to do that better, faster, more efficient, more effective. And that's the outcome here. It's not, hey, I want to save, $1 million and I think I can do that doing this. No, you're going to get an existential benefit out of this as much as I am. And come along this journey with me. Bringing the guard down of our employees and our team members. Because I think that's one of the big scares right now for everybody is, oh my God, AI is going to replace me. Oh my God, how am I going to lose my job to AI? I don't want to design AI like that. I don't think that is the best set or way to think about it. It's how do I build AIs with humans in the loop? How do I increase the capacity of humans through AI? How do I have them doing the right work versus administrative, non-value added work that the computer can do, right? Let's let them do the things they're great at with the creativity, the strategic value add. That's where I want our workers working. So I have a different perspective than some. I know a lot of boards are like, well, we can outsource our call center to an AI. That saves us millions upon millions. Well, what's the customer impact to that? What's this or that? You know, I agree. Tier one support, not many people want to do those jobs. I mean, there's averaging 30+% turnover every year in every call center around the world. So it's not, and it's a low level job. Well, what if tier one is AI? That's good. Okay. But tier two needs a human. Sometimes humans need to speak to another human to solve their issues. And that's what you want your customers to feel. So, okay, how do we enable tier one, right? We've changed the job. We've not eliminated, we've changed the work, changed the worker by giving them much more robust tools to do their job, less angry customers, right? Like, how do we really enhance them and what they do? And that's the perspective I always try to bring in our projects.
Yeah, there's so much richness in what you shared there. I think, on the call center front, those roles are where people grow a lot. Those are entry level roles for people entering particular industry. I remember I spent some time at Google, and the number of people I ran into there, and this is a long time ago, so I don't know where it's at now, but at that time, the number of people who actually started in the call center and grew within the organization over time was really astounding to me, and they really made it this like talent pipeline. And so I
Yep.
think and I love the idea of just like integrate the human and the AI experience there, and see how people grow within that. And from the change perspective, I think, I mean, we know this is kind of change professionals. When change is being done on you or to you, we'll always have more resistance than not. And I think with AI, especially, empowerment becomes kind of non-optional because you actually, if you want people to get the best out of the tools, they actually have to like want to play with them and want to explore them. And I think there's something about actually getting out of people's way and encouraging them, like giving them the problem and encouraging them to figure it out by themselves, that I think will take us a lot farther than not. And there's something in there too about like, can we reimagine how we do work and the role that work plays in our lives? So actually, we're empowering people with the actual problems of like, here's where we are, here's where we want to get to, go figure it out, figure it out together, figure it out on your own, etc. And then whatever time freedom you may unlock there, take it. Like, is there a world in which where we actually trust people and allow them in that rather than thinking of it as like a as as no more than a cost in the business, which I do think is a little
Mhm.
bit of the frame right now. It's a human resource, right?
Yep. It it's not a cost basis, it's a revenue generator, right?
Yeah,
A value generator, sometimes not
right.
direct revenue, but value generation versus cost
Yeah,
generation. Like there's a lot there. That's been one of the things I've tried to bring to HR is, HR's always been looked at as a cost center or a compliance and governance function, and that's
yeah,
about it. And no, HR is a strategic partner in the room, and they can
yeah,
really help you shape your business, fine tune your business, optimize, do that all
yeah.
through data, analytics, insights. How do we do that? How do we really be partners with the business, bring them along? But there's even instances of generating income. Not for one of my past companies, there was a policy that was put in place to, for governance and compliance with regulations of paying people for break times. And the programmers programmed it to be any break less than 30 minutes consecutive got paid. People found that loophole. We had 75% of breaks were between 29 minutes flat and 29 minutes and 59 seconds. Well, people found that loophole and talked to each other. So That was literally costing that company $1.5 million annually across 30,000 people because they that 30 minutes each day added up to 2.5 hours a week, which took a 40-hour work week to 42.5 hours. Now you're paying overtime, right? Like it adds up. But by going to the managers, showing them the data, giving them real-time reporting and heads up like, hey, you have this here, you have to talk with your team member, you have to work with it. Don't ask them to come back early from a break, all that. Like there's other opportunities out there for HR. We've also done things of measuring ENPS, so Employee Net Promoter Score, and taking that whole value chain down to guest spend and how if you increased your employee net promoter score by 1 point, it really translated to guest spending more per day with us, right? Like, so there's value generation to be had and ways to quantify that employee experience through companies. It's just, again, great foundations and data, great trust in the analytics and the insights that come out of it, and business leaders giving them options to do the right things and do great things with your people data.
I would actually extrapolate that further and say, I think the HR example, I think, is a really good one. But I think more broadly, just people, thinking about people, like, I think there's a shift that maybe needs to happen of like thinking of people as resources or like pair of hands who are just like here to deliver this work to strategic partners in the purpose of the business that you're trying to create and drive, right? Strategic partners in the growth you're trying to drive, strategic partners in whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. And I think this is where that partnership between AI and people becomes really important, and that trust and empowerment piece becomes really, really crucial. So, Shane, I'd love to hear from you a little bit more around where do you see AI being enabling for managers rather than feeling like a burden or like one more thing they have to think about.
So, big proponent of AI being, you know, tongue in cheek, you're the co-pilot to a manager, right? Not a backseat driver, not the main driver of things, but being there as their trusted, valued assistant, right? How can we enable managers to alleviate the administrative stuff, the compliance stuff, keep them within compliance and regulations and all that, help them become better leaders, right? Understanding their teams, being a coach to help with feedback and development, helping them, bounce ideas off of it. There's so many different ways that I think AI can enhance rather than be a burden. And I think that comes with education, understanding what is it good at, what's the strengths, what's the weaknesses, how can it help them. So I think each manager needs to really kind of sit down, have a base course in understanding what does AI, because all AIs are different. I use 4 different AI models for different things because they each have their strengths and weaknesses. Understanding that will help you gain, the true optimized outcome. I don't expect everybody to really get that nerdy into it like myself, but yeah, really, if you understand the limits and strengths of your AI that you have access to, will really help you in your day to day, right? Managing your calendar, summarizing conversations, you know, my favorite thing to have happen is do transcripts of and meeting notes of my meetings. So instead of me trying to write down meetings or type up notes, guess what? I'm paying attention and focusing on those speaking in the meeting, and I'm listening with intent and having good discussion and ensuring that AI is capturing all of that for me in my notations and the takeaways, all of that. And I'm sure many are like me, or you're in back-to-back meetings all day long, so you don't have a moment to sit down and say, all right, who had to do what, what's going on, all that's already done for me. I don't have to deal with that anymore. So that things like that, where can we give value back? And just read a Harvard Business Review article yesterday, and it was the best stat I've read in a long time. But managers spend 54% of their time on administrative tasks.
Yeah.
how can we enable AI just to cut into that fractionally, piece by piece by piece, right?
Yeah.
And I have strong ADHD, and if I see my email pop up or a message ping, I'm into it instantly. I got to see what it is, how's my day changed, what's going on, all of this. AI can assist me in that, right?
Yeah.
So I could have one of my AI agents summarize my emails every 30 minutes and give me kind of a little pop up of here's what's come in, here's what's going on. Chats, I have it, but I actually don't really pay attention to it because I'll be in my IMs all the time and going through those. But yeah, every 30 minutes I get a little dialogue pop up that says, hey, here's what your inbox looks like over the last 30 minutes. I think you should look at this one now, right?
Yeah.
Like, help me focus my attention because I have a limited amount of time and I can only go in and deal with what I can deal with right then and there. So let AI help me with that.
Yeah, and I love the kind of, again, it's the experimentation, right? Like it can be that kind of co-pilot and for each person to and each leader to kind of figure out what that looks like in their own right. And I'm also hearing from you, like for HR to take seriously, like how do you integrate these tools in a way that alleviates managers as well? And again, there's no like here's a standard set of things or tools or answers you can deploy, right? It's very much like
Mm-hmm.
experiment, test a lot, figure out what's working and figure out what's working for who and how it's supporting them. And yeah, that statistic around like 54% of the manager's time going into admin it's just kind of horrific, really. And also like
Mm-hmm.
if I think about like my time in managerial roles, like that's not surprising either, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
And imagine, like, I was just thinking about this morning around feedback, manager feedback, and how do you
Yeah.
increase the feedback culture, and what are some things you could do
Yeah.
as, thinking about our call coming up. And I was like, what I want to build and I want to figure out, how do I do this is imagine having your one-on-ones where you have it in a Teams meeting, have your co-pilot agent documenting the notes, and then create the feedback notes to
Yeah.
automatically send down to my HCM. But also, I want the manager's notes to go in, but I want the team member to then rate the feedback of the manager. Do you agree with
Yeah.
it? How do you feel? Was it actionable? Do you need
Yeah.
more of something else? Like, and then provide that data in and save that data, and then bring that data back, and then help the manager coach the manager. Hey, you should really focus on X, Y, and Z with Shane because
Hmm.
he really is wanting this, right? Like
Yeah.
leveraging it to enhance them, not replace them.
Totally. And especially for managers, I think this is a great place to receive feedback. Like if you can connect in your organization's kind of leadership principles, values, practices, whatever it is, it can actually then start to give you feedback around like, here's where you were on point, here's what you could do differently, as
Yep.
well as the direct people feedback and in a way that's more digestible and in a way that's like regular. Can we do that on a bi-weekly basis, every other week? Is that a monthly thing? But can it be more constant than the one time a year or twice a year that I think about how I'm doing for a performance moment?
Yep. I've made it a part of my practice since I've been a leader, but my one downs, so my direct reports
Yeah.
weekly, and I let
I
them
love that.
choose if it's weekly or bi-weekly. you know, how are we doing? What's going on?
Yeah.
This is your feedback time, questions, comments, concerns. How are we doing?
Yeah.
I'm taking feedback from them as well and documenting it. Am I leading you the right way? On a quarterly basis, I try to meet with two downs. How am
Hmm.
I doing for you? This is my perception. This is what I'm seeing. Because I preach to everybody, your career is your career. Nobody's going to care about it more than you.
Totally.
So I can give you feedback, I can give you guidance, but I need you to step up and tell me, hey, my next job is going to be this. Great. Let's get you doing that next job before you get it. So when that job opens up, guess what? They already think you're doing that job and it's an easy promotion cycle,
Yeah.
right? It's, oh
Absolutely.
man, Shane's already been doing that level of work. Yeah, of course he needs to be that level of right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
how do I lean into AI to help unlock that potential for managers that have the time to do it? Because I think many want to do that. It's just they don't have the time to do that.
Hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Shane, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I'm sad to bring our conversation to a close, but it is that time, and I really appreciate your insights. I really love how your mind works. It's very different from mine. I love your love for like analytics and kind of connecting the dots and efficiency. And I hope it inspires some other leaders to think in a new way as they're thinking about AI.
Thank you. It was great talking with you today. I can sit here and talk about this for hours, and I hope we get to do this again.
Thanks.